Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. A little backstory, I'm an online artist, and this took place in early 2022 when I was in my mid-20s. There was a popular artist who called himself a professional and worked in the entertainment industry. I used to look up to him. Let's call him Marcus. One day, while browsing social media, I noticed how Marcus's art looked strangely familiar to some video game artwork I'd seen before. After some digging, I found exact matches to his art. He was directly copying official game art and profiting from it by selling prints on his online shops. He didn't even try to make his references different from the original pieces. I sent him a private message. Hey Marcus, I need to talk to you about your artwork. What you're doing with these references could get you into serious trouble. What are you talking about? He replied almost immediately. You're copying official artwork and selling it. I've seen artists get sued for hundreds of thousands of dollars for this exact thing. Some even ended up in legal trouble. His response was explosive. You don't know what you're talking about. All artists use references. You're just trying to start drama. He then posted publicly about me, including my username, which linked to all my contact information, my email, Facebook, art accounts, and Instagram. Look at this wannabe artist trying to tell me how to create art, he wrote in his post. His devoted followers and friend group jumped in, flooding my inbox with horrible messages. Your art is garbage, one wrote. Who do you think you are to attack Marcus? Said another. The harassment continued for weeks, including death threats that kept me up at night with anxiety. The final straw came when I discovered he had directly copied one of my own pieces and was selling it. Feeling helpless about finding legal representation, I had an idea. If I couldn't stop him, maybe the original copyright holders could. I methodically went through his referenced artwork and matched them to their original sources. Through LinkedIn, I found a creative director at one of the game studios in Japan. Let's call him Takeshi. I messaged Takeshi. I have evidence of someone selling unauthorized copies of your company's artwork. He responded simply, send the evidence. Our legal team will review it. For the next week, Marcus continued his harassment, commenting on everything I posted. Then suddenly, silence. His online shop disappeared. His post about me vanished. He stopped engaging with his usual group of friends publicly. A fan commented on his page, "What happened to your prints?" Marcus replied vaguely, "Taking a break from social media. Found out who my real friends are." Later, one of his former friends messaged my art account. I can't believe what a bully Marcus really was. We all feel so stupid for believing him. The satisfaction of seeing justice served was incredible. All of this could have been avoided if he had listened to my warning instead of attacking me. Fast forward to 2024, and I heard through industry connections that Marcus still struggles to find work in the field. The lawsuit from Takeshi's company apparently became widely known in professional circles, making studios hesitant to work with him. His reputation never recovered from the copyright infringement scandal. The next one is an entitled People's Story. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but after everything that's happened, I feel like others need to hear about how a greedy homeowners association tried to steal my family's ranch and ended up getting exactly what they deserved. I inherited my grandfather's 120-acre ranch in Montana about 5 years ago. It's been in our family since the 1940s, completely off-grid with solar panels, well water, and everything we need to live sustainably. The ranch sits about 15 miles outside of town, and until recently, our only neighbors were other ranchers and farmers who minded their own business. That all changed when Sterling Heights, a fancy, planned community, started developing land about a mile from my property line. They marketed themselves as luxury ranch-style living, but it was really just oversized houses with tiny yards and strict rules about everything from fence height to what color you could paint your mailbox. I didn't pay much attention to them at first. Live and let live, right? But then last summer, I got a certified letter from the Sterling Heights Homeowners Association that made my blood boil. The letter stated that my property was officially part of the Sterling Heights planned community and demanded I immediately comply with their Homeowners Association regulations. They claimed my solar panels were unsightly, my livestock was not permitted under community guidelines, and my workshop was an unauthorized structure. They gave me 30 days to remedy these violations or face daily fines. I called their office immediately and spoke to Karen Thompson, the Homeowners Association president. Ma'am, there must be some mistake. My ranch has never been part of your development. We've been here since the 1940s. Actually, Mr. Mitchell, she said in this condescending tone that made my skin crawl, your property falls within our community's master plan. The previous owner should have informed you. The previous owner was my grandfather, and this land has been in my family for 3 generations. We're not part of your development. Well, that's not what our documents show. We'll need you to begin bringing your property into compliance immediately. I tried explaining again, but she wouldn't listen. If you don't comply, we'll be forced to place liens on your property and pursue legal action. That's when I knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. They were trying to forcibly absorb my ranch into their homeowners association. I hired Sarah Chen, a property rights attorney who'd helped one of my neighbors with a boundary dispute years ago. Sarah pulled all the property records and confirmed what I already knew. My ranch was completely independent of Sterling Heights. Their master plan was a joke. They'd literally drawn their community boundaries to include my property without any legal right to do so. The harassment didn't stop. They started sending daily violation notices, each threatening thousands in fines. Their compliance officers would park at the edge of my property taking photos. They even sent letters to my feed suppliers claiming I was operating an illegal farm and trying to interfere with my business relationships. One morning, I found Karen and 2 other homeowners association board members actually on my property, measuring my workshop with tape measures. "You're trespassing," I told them firmly. "Leave now." "We're conducting an official inspection," Karen said, waving a clipboard at me. "As per Section 8.3 of the community bylaws, this isn't your community. You have no authority here. Leave, or I'm calling the sheriff." They left, but not before Karen shouted, "We'll see what your attitude is like when you're paying $500 a day in fines." That evening, I met with Sarah to plan our strategy. "They're way over the line," she said. "We've got them dead to rights on harassment, trespassing, and tortious interference with business relationships. Plus, we can prove they knowingly falsified documents to claim authority over your property." We filed a lawsuit the next day. The complaint was beautiful. Sarah had documented every single harassing letter, every trespass, every attempt to interfere with my business. We asked for an immediate injunction to stop their harassment and sought damages for their actions. The Homeowners Association's lawyer tried to bluff at first, sending a condescending letter about how they'd be happy to work out a reasonable timeline for compliance. Sarah's response was to send them copies of the original property surveys from the 1940s, along with aerial photos showing my ranch predated their development by over 70 years. 2 days later, their tune changed completely. Their lawyer requested a meeting. I'll never forget sitting across the conference table from Karen and the Homeowners Association board. Their lawyer kept trying to interrupt as Sarah methodically laid out our case, but Sarah wasn't having it. "Your clients have engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment against my client," she said. "You've trespassed on his property, interfered with his business relationships, and knowingly falsified documents to claim authority you don't have. We're prepared to take this to trial and seek punitive damages." Karen tried to speak up. "We were just trying to maintain community standards." "Community standards don't apply to property that isn't part of your community," Sarah cut her off. "You knew that, yet you proceeded anyway. That's acting in bad faith, and judges tend to take a very dim view of that." Their lawyer pulled Karen and the board members aside for a whispered conference. When they returned, their lawyer cleared his throat. "We're prepared to offer a settlement." "We're not interested in settling unless it includes 3 things, Sarah interrupted. "First, a legally binding admission that Mr. Mitchell's ranch is not and has never been part of Sterling Heights. Second, compensation for all legal fees and damages caused by your harassment. Third, a permanent injunction preventing any future attempts to claim authority over his property." The negotiations took hours. The Homeowners Association board members kept trying to insert conditions like maintaining property standards consistent with neighboring areas, but Sarah shut them down every time. By the end of the day, we had a settlement agreement that gave us everything we wanted, plus $75,000 in damages. But the story doesn't end there. About a week after we signed the settlement, I got an interesting visit from Tom Henderson, one of the original Sterling Heights developers. He asked to meet privately at my ranch. "I need to tell you something," he said, looking uncomfortable. "The whole plan to claim your property wasn't Karen's idea. It came from higher up. Turns out the development company had been promising investors they'd expand Sterling Heights to include historic ranch properties. They'd been showing my ranch in their marketing materials without my knowledge, claiming it would be part of Phase 3 of their development. They were hoping to pressure you into selling," Tom explained. "They figured once you started getting fines and legal threats, you'd give up and take their offer." "What offer? They never made one. They were going to, once the fines started piling up. They were planning to offer you about half of market value, telling you it was that, or keep fighting the homeowners association. I was furious. Why are you telling me this now? Because they're doing the same thing to other properties around here. I quit last week because of it. I've got documentation, emails, marketing materials, everything. I called Sarah immediately. With Tom's evidence, we filed a second lawsuit, this time against the development company itself, alleging fraud and racketeering. That case is still ongoing, but we've already been contacted by 3 other ranchers who were getting similar harassment from Sterling Heights. The Homeowners Association has completely backed off. They even built an expensive privacy fence along their property line. Technically, it violates their own height restrictions, but I guess they were more interested in pretending my ranch doesn't exist than enforcing their precious rules. My solar panels are still up, my livestock is still grazing, and my workshop hasn't moved an inch. The settlement money paid for some nice upgrades to my off-grid systems, and I used some of it to help other ranchers fight back against similar land grabs. Karen resigned as Homeowners Association president shortly after our settlement. I heard she moved to Florida, probably somewhere with no ranch houses in sight. Her replacement is actually reasonable. He even apologized to me personally for the whole mess. The development company's case is looking worse by the day. Sarah says with Tom's evidence and the other ranchers coming forward, we've got a solid RICO case. The investors are pulling out, and Sterling Heights' Phase 3 has been quietly canceled. Last week, I hosted a barbecue for all the neighboring ranchers. We set up right by that fancy privacy fence, with our trucks and tractors in full view. Someone suggested we form our own association, the Real Ranchers Association, just to spite Sterling Heights. We all had a good laugh about that. The whole experience taught me something important. Sometimes you have to stand your ground no matter how big the bully is. They thought they could pressure a simple rancher into giving up his land. Instead, they got a lesson in what happens when you mess with someone who knows their rights and isn't afraid to fight for them. My grandfather used to say, "This land is our heritage, and some things are worth more than money." He was right. I'm proud to say his ranch is still here, still independent, and will stay that way for generations to come. Update, 6 months later. The situation with the development company just reached its conclusion, and I wanted to share what happened because it's even better than we hoped. Our RICO case gained serious traction when 2 former Sterling Heights executives came forward with additional evidence. They had emails and meeting minutes showing the company had been running this same scheme in 3 other states, targeting family farms and ranches near their developments. Their playbook was always the same. Claim the property was part of their development, harass the owners with fines and threats, then swoop in with lowball offers when people got desperate. They'd been getting away with it for years because most victims couldn't afford to fight back. Sarah combined our case with similar lawsuits from the other states, and it became a class action. The discovery process was brutal for Sterling Heights. Every document revealed more evidence of their systematic fraud. The turning point came when their CEO was deposed. He tried to claim ignorance, but Sarah had emails showing he personally approved what they called their acquisition strategy. When she confronted him with an email where he wrote, "These hicks won't know what hit them," he actually tried to grab the document from her hands. Not a good look in front of the cameras. The company tried to settle privately, but we refused. Sarah insisted on a public settlement with admissions of wrongdoing. 3 weeks ago, they finally caved. The final settlement, $12 million to be split among all victims, public admission of their scheme, and a court order barring them from any similar practices in the future. They also had to withdraw all development plans within 5 miles of any existing ranch or farm property. My share of the settlement wasn't huge, about $200,000, but that wasn't the point. The real victory was exposing their tactics and stopping them from targeting other family farms and ranches. The fallout has been massive. The CEO resigned in disgrace, the company's stock tanked, and they're selling off most of their planned communities. Sterling Heights itself has been sold to a local developer who's actually working with the community instead of trying to take it over. Tom Henderson, the whistleblower who helped break the case, has started a consulting firm helping small property owners protect themselves from corporate land grabs. He's hired several former Sterling Heights residents who were disgusted by their old company's actions. The Real Ranchers Association joke became reality. We actually formed a mutual aid group to help local farmers and ranchers fight against corporate bullying. We've already helped stop 2 similar schemes in neighboring counties. Karen, the former Homeowners Association president, tried to sue me for defamation after she was named in some news stories about the case. Sarah shut that down fast by showing Karen's own emails discussing the scheme. The case was dismissed with prejudice, and Karen had to pay our legal fees. The new homeowners association at Sterling Heights is night and day from the old one. They've eliminated most of the ridiculous restrictions and actually focus on things that matter, like maintaining roads and common areas. Several residents have even installed solar panels, properly permitted ones, of course. My ranch is doing better than ever. I used part of the settlement money to upgrade our sustainable systems and start a program teaching local kids about off-grid living and sustainable ranching. The same solar panels and workshop that the homeowners association called eyesores are now field trip destinations for local schools. Grandfather would be proud, not just because we protected the ranch, but because we helped make sure other families can keep their land too. Sometimes standing your ground isn't just about protecting what's yours, it's about making sure others don't have to fight the same battles you did. Life is peaceful again. The privacy fence is still there, but now it's covered in wild grapevines, nature's way of saying some barriers aren't meant to last. Every morning I watch the sunrise over my solar panels and know that this land will stay in my family, just like my grandfather wanted. No homeowners association, no development company, no amount of money will ever change that. The next one is a malicious compliances story. For this story, you need to know that I am the kind of person who will go a great distance for a good laugh, as you will see below. I love this story, and we tell it every once in a while, even though it has been more than 20 years. I live in the US and I own an IT support company. Many years ago I used a cell phone company named Nextel. They had this great push-to-talk feature that turned your phone into a walkie-talkie, which was perfect for communicating with coworkers in my IT work. However, their customer service was a nightmare. Anytime I needed to contact them, it would take at least 40 minutes on hold. Eventually I had to switch to a cheaper service, which meant getting a new number. Now you can port your number to a new carrier, but back then you had to change numbers if you switched carriers. I canceled all the phones on our plan except for mine, which I downgraded to an emergency plan costing about $10 a month. I left the old phone plugged in at my office and set my voicemail message to instruct callers of my new number. The phone just sat next to my desk on a shelf, plugged into a charger so that I could see if anyone called. I could also hear the phone make a sound when it disconnected from the cellular network and then a different sound when it connected to the cellular network. It connected and disconnected constantly there in my office. I would estimate that it only stayed connected to the network about 50% of the time. After 6 months, I decided to cancel it. I had to wait on hold for the customary 30 to 40 minutes just to cancel my service. After telling the service rep that I was always dropping off the network and that I had already switched services, they verified the service problems on my account and canceled my entire plan. I wasn't under any contract at the time, so there was no problem canceling my service with Nextel. As expected, I got my final bill. It was somewhere around $10 since that was my monthly plan, just the emergency plan, and I didn't make any phone calls. I paid the bill and was happy to be done with that carrier. Then, the next month, I got a bill for 4 cents. Yes, just 4 cents. I figured it was a clerical error and ignored it, expecting them to write it off. But no, each month another bill for 4 cents arrived. I was incredulous. I checked the postmark and saw that the postage to send me the bill was costing them 10 times more than the bill itself, and they kept sending the bill every month. I could have paid the bill, but it seemed ridiculous to write a check for 4 cents and spend more on a stamp. After 6 months, I finally had enough and decided on some very petty, malicious compliance. I decided to invest the 40 minutes on hold to call Nextel to work this out. By golly, if they wanted my 4 cents, I would give them my 4 cents. I planned to wait on hold for 40 minutes and pay the 4 cents with a credit card, knowing it would cost them more in fees. I told my wife about my plan, thinking it was the perfect malicious compliance story. But my wife, the true master of malicious compliance, suggested an even better idea. Call and ask if I could make payments on the 4 cents, splitting it into 2 payments on my credit card. OMG! I was in the presence of malicious royalty. I called, waited on hold for 45 minutes, and finally got through to a representative. The representative sounded like one of those airport terminal attendants who act like they are checking your reservations, but instead, they are writing a Stephen King-length novel. I could hear the clickety-clackety sound of the keyboard. The female representative was constantly typing as I explained that I had canceled my service but kept getting the final bill and proposed making payments. The representative, typing away, said she'd look up my account. As she typed away at her keyboard, I explained that I had gotten the final bill and that I would like to set up a payment plan to take care of the outstanding balance. I told her that I would like to pay half on my credit card today and pay the remaining half the following month. She was agreeing with me and typing away when suddenly she stopped typing and went quiet. "Sir," she said. "Yes," I replied. "Are you aware of the balance amount?" "Yes," I said. "4 cents?" She said. "Yes," I said. I figured that you really wanted that 4 cents because you keep spending all this postage to send me bills each month. So I'm just calling you to take care of it." After a brief silence, I heard the clickety-clack of the keyboard again, and she said that I would not have to worry about the balance because she was writing it off. I insisted on giving my credit card for the first half of the payment, but she firmly dismissed it and assured me I wouldn't get any more bills. My wife's suggestion turned a simple prank into a masterpiece of malicious compliance. I may be good at it, but my wife is on another level, and you really have to want to do malicious compliance to wait on hold for 40 minutes? The next one is an entitled People's Story. My daughter and I drove an hour to an arts and crafts Christmas market on the recommendation of a friend. When we got to the venue, it was clear it was very popular. We did the obligatory circling of the parking lot looking for a much-coveted space. We found a great spot in the furthest back corner that 2 ladies were leaving, and we patiently waited when along comes the worst type of entitled person. There are lines of people waiting for spots, and when the Nissan left, this woman very well knew what she was doing and pulled into the spot that I was patiently waiting for and was going to pull straight into. I stopped and got out and went to her window, and here is where I could have been a better person, but I chose not to be. I said, "Are you kidding me? You saw me waiting." She said she was just trying to leave the parking lot, but O was blocking her. She said, "Merry Christmas," and duck off. I got back in my car and called her a very unkind name and wished her a Merry Christmas as well. And as I was backing up to pull away, her and her young child got out of the car and went into the market where I told her she was the most awful kind of person. I hope she gets coal for Christmas and that her car doesn't start, because if she did it to me, she's done it before and cares for no one else but herself. So if you went the arts and crafts market at the Abbey Center, I hope you had a great time and patiently found parking, and have a wonderful holiday season. If you're this woman, I hope you learn one day that you need community and people, and if you burn all your bridges, life will be pretty lonely. I just wish I could post her license plate. Off to shop and calm. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.